Hi, everybody. Welcome to this VanCaf Spotlight interview with Matthew James Wilson. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that this interview is being held on the unceded Coast Salish territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations here in Vancouver. I'd also like to state that Matthew is in LA, and LA is on the Gabrielino or Tongva nations. So we just like to acknowledge that this land is not ours, and that we will act accordingly and respect it accordingly. I will also like to state that Indigenous lives matter, Black lives matter. We, as Canadians or Americans, need to step up and be allies to these people and help fight for their rights. And if you want to learn any more information about this stuff, you can go to VanCaf's website and check out Wes Harmon's land acknowledgement comic that they wrote for VanCaf this year. Or you can go and check out my land acknowledgement comic, which is also on VanCaf's website. Great. Well, thank you for joining us, Matthew.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to talk with you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been 2 years, so I'm really happy to hear your voice and see your face again.
Yeah, you as well.
I feel like when I first met you, I knew about your art and what you did, but I didn't really know you personally until you stayed with me
Yeah,
for like 2 weeks, and we became very close friends through that.
yeah, that was such a fun time. I feel like I was like in the middle of doing a couple different fairs, and it was like such a great time to like have a break and hang with you too. And yeah, just I feel like you showed me so much of Vancouver that I maybe wouldn't have seen, and it was like nice to have like friends there to spend time with.
Yeah, it was fun. One of my favorite moments with you is probably sharing all the Canadian content that you missed out growing up in America.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know if not many people probably know this, but you're born in Canada, but you were raised in America.
Yeah. I was born in Toronto, and then I moved to upstate New York because my mom worked at a university there when I was a kid. And yeah, there's like so much stuff that I feel like culturally and just like having family there, I feel connected to Canada, but my identity, I like don't really know how much I really like relate to the culture or feel nostalgic for media from there, besides stuff that I found when I was a lot older or stuff that I watched when I was like 5 years old. So
Right.
there's like a really big gap as far as what I know. And I feel like I don't really know any like real Canadian history as well, which is like shows whenever I'm there.
You say Canadian history like I'm showing you important things, but I literally showed you
Yeah.
versus Benny and like Fubar.
Yeah, definitely important touchstones for the culture.
Yeah, clearly. So I'm curious, like, Forge Art Mag is like this ultimate like clash of like photography, illustration, like music reviews, like all media. What was your first introduction to like zine culture and DIY culture?
Yeah, well, so I went to, when I was living in Rochester, New York, I went to like a public art high school and studied music there. And my mom was like an educator, and she was really into music and art history, and she like exposed me to a lot of stuff. But yeah, as far as like DIY culture, I feel like the one of the first things that like really left a big impression on me was this movie that my aunt, who's my mom's sister, she's a painter. She was visiting us at some point when I was in high school, I think, and she showed me this movie, Beautiful Losers, which is a documentary that I think Aaron Rose, I think was, I don't know if he directed it or if he curated it, or he was essentially in charge of the gallery that the documentary sort of focuses on. And yeah, that movie just exposed me to a lot of artists and sort of like graffiti, and also the overlap of a lot of people who were making sort of folk art who then got involved with fine art or making art for corporations or making art on like a really large scale, or even just making like public art. And I think like the ideology that a lot of the artists like Ed Templeton and Margaret Kilgallen and Barry McGee and I think Harmony Korine is in that movie, and yeah, there's just like a ton of artists from that film and from that community that I think had like a really interesting way of talking about their work or why they made work, and that really like I think got me excited about it, or allowed me to think about it outside of like just art education, which was what I was doing like in high school.
Yeah, that's a really good movie to watch at such a young point in your life.
Totally, yeah.
So you worked with Rookie Mag and Vice at a very young age. Was that like around the same time, like after discovering Beautiful Losers?
Yeah, so I think I watched Beautiful Losers at some point like early on in high school, and then I think when I was around like 16, I started doing the magazine with some friends in high school, and then through that, it sort of led to, I don't remember when exactly I like decided to move to New York for college, but like around then, I think I was becoming more aware of a lot of other publications or just stuff that was outside of just like my own community or my school's community. And yeah, once I was in New York, I think I met Tavi at one of the rookie readings for I think a book launch that they did, and there was a couple of people who were contributors to the magazine that I'd interviewed, like Kendra Yee, who was a friend from Toronto, who I interviewed like right before moving to New York, and Alyssa Johanna, who is a photographer who was also involved with Rookie and was friends with some people in New York. And yeah, and then I think at some point, I think, yeah, when I met Tavi, I like gave her a copy of the magazine back when I think the first 2 issues were printed. And so I gave her maybe one of the 2 of them. And then like a year later, she and I reconnected, and she reached out about me like writing a piece for them. And around that same time I was in college and was in New York. And so I like just offered to do some like internship stuff for them. And yeah, I feel like I was sort of there at like a, like as the publication had sort of already established itself a lot. And I was like a fan of like a ton of people who had been working for them and were involved with Rookie. And yeah, I just like really looked up to the model and Tavi's approach to things. And it was just like so cool meeting people like Amy Rose Spiegel is the first person who like really edited my work outside of like a teacher, and she taught me so much about writing. And yeah, it was just like really respectful and patient. And I think like the fact that they did so much work to develop a lot of young artists and young writers and people who I think really valued that opportunity at that time. There's like a whole generation of people who I think sort of came out of that or were involved with it, who really like had their first platform or had somebody take their work seriously through that. And yeah, I've always just like really looked up to that, and it's a bummer that it's like no longer around the same way. But yeah, and then I think around that same time I was also interning for a record label called Bayonet Records, and then like I think in my freshman year of college I interned for the Bowery Presents, which is like a they like operate a lot of the venues in New York, and I was like making like banner ads for them. And then I think around my second year at college I was like pretty unhappy just going to school and was uncertain about the future, and felt like it was like just financially such a big burden and commitment to stay there. And also from like talking with a lot of artists at that point, I think I'd been doing the magazine maybe for 4 years by then, and I think I was like really aware of just how people have gone about their work outside of going to school or just like staying within that sort of path, I guess. And yeah, I was hoping to work for some place, and I think the summer after my second year, I interned for Vice, and then was planning on dropping out of school that fall, and just sort of coincidentally, I think maybe like 2 weeks into that semester, after I'd already dropped out, I was like offered a job at Vice, and it was for a new department. And so, yeah, and I think that like when they hired me, I'd had like a portfolio of work, and I'd worked with people at the company for the internship, and I like made it aware that I was like looking for work, I guess. And so, but because it was a new department, I worked with a lot of people I hadn't worked with in the past. And it wasn't until like halfway through working there that I had my like 21st birthday, and they were like, wow, that's crazy. I didn't realize that we hired you when you were a lot younger. But yeah, so I think it was like, I think that sort of also served as like a really important tool and like period of like education working for them that I think going to school maybe like wouldn't have been able to provide the same way. But yeah.
Did you find your age like stopped you at all from people taking you seriously, or like they realized that they, you know, hired someone who was only 21 at the time?
Yeah, I think I was lucky in that situation where I had been working there for 6 months, and they were like giving me responsibilities and like treating me as though I was a lot older. So they like couldn't really like take a step back from that, I guess, or they couldn't really suddenly like start treating me like I was younger after that, because I'd already had a lot of responsibilities. But yeah, I think that like I think the positive and negative of the internet is being able to have a place to share your work or put your ideas outside of just like talking with people one-on-one or face-to-face. And so I think the fact that I had done a lot of work or had put a lot of effort into what I was doing meant that people were maybe like not suspicious of how old I was, and like I like luckily feel like I've like looked a lot older maybe just since I've been younger. And I think that yeah, it wasn't like, I think that there was maybe, I think honestly, like at school, I felt more like there was a degree of condescending towards people for being younger, or I think in a structure where there's an understanding that there's a hierarchy between your professor and you, and your professor sort of like is like judging your work against everybody else, or is thinking about you in the context of all of your peers. It's a lot easier to sort of get sucked into what people expect of someone who's a teenager at that point. But yeah, I think luckily, like I was able to be taken seriously by certain people early on enough, and people were really generous with their time and support in letting me interview them for the magazine, that I think it wasn't as hard at that point to be taken seriously, or for people to yeah, just like not assume that I was a lot younger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you told me your age at TCAF, it kind of like blew my mind. I was like, what? I'm like, I thought I was a hard worker when I was a young kid, and then I found out your age, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
No, it's great. It's
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
yeah, it's really impressive to see someone like you at such a young age take your career like so seriously, and think about like you know, what you want to do in the long run, you know, like did you ever think like creating Forge Art magazine that like you would still be doing it today?
I don't know. I think like at the beginning of it, it was a project that I did with two friends in high school, and I think all of us maybe had different reasons for wanting to do it, or had a different idea of like what it could be when we started it. And only really once I was in college did it become a more personal project, and I think it reflected a lot more of my personal taste and just like where I was and friends and peers from around then. And but yeah, I think that when it started, it was because of going to a public art high school, wanting to go to college and pursue art in some way, but also exist. I think a lot of my professors or teachers, I guess, in high school were a little bit like discouraging of pursuing art professionally after high school, just knowing that it was like a very difficult field or economy to try to do that in. And I think that anybody who was really pursuing art or music or performance who was going there in a really serious way also kind of viewed it as having to go to a conservatory for that and like really take it seriously and maybe become an educator afterwards, or maybe do other work in like a local sort of form of whatever the industry that they were interested in was. And there was a music school called Eastman School of Music that was like a really big music school where I grew up, and most people like took lessons there, and like the best musicians or the people that took it the most seriously ended up going there. But I felt like I was really excited about making new work or talking to people that were making their own work, rather than just thinking about people who could perform other people's work really well, or like the study of the idea of making art rather than just making art. And I think with the magazine and doing it in high school, it felt like it was an opportunity to talk with people who were successful in some right or had an idea of what their practice was, and ask them how they got to that point, or like figure out like what really interests them or what allowed them to make a sustainable practice. And then also like being a young person and seeing the internet and seeing how people were connecting or people were sharing their work at younger and younger ages, I think it also felt like an opportunity to provide a platform for similar teenagers or young people or people who were starting out in some way. And it felt nice to be able to talk about the same thing and offer a similar level of seriousness for people who were maybe just starting out, or people who were like years into their career, and also just realizing that like neither party was really comfortable with their work or felt like they knew what they were doing anymore was also like really like humbling, and I think made me feel just like I had a better understanding of why people make art or what the purpose of it is in people's lives. And yeah, I think the magazine has like changed a lot since then, and the format of doing it or the purpose of the project has changed. And I think that like if it had remained what I thought it would be at that point, I think it probably would have been over by now. And I think that there are certain aspects of the magazine now that I've like moved away from or moved on from in some ways. But I think like allowing the project to change so much, or like accepting what the project can be each time that I was working on it and trying to just like put the same energy into it has allowed it to exist a lot more than if it were just like my 16-year-old's idea of like what a magazine should be, I guess.
Right.
But yeah.
What are some of your like accomplishments with Forge that you tried to do at the beginning, which you may have succeeded with now?
Like things that I like set out to do that took like longer to like accomplish, or
yeah, or like things that like you said, you really wanted to focus on spotlighting on emerging artists and like giving them a platform to speak about their work and like kind of flesh out their own ideas while talking to you. Yeah, were there anything like that where you're like, oh, I'm so glad that this came out of Forge?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's definitely like, I think like I really appreciate a lot of the like opportunities and friendships that have come out of it for myself, and I appreciate like the sort of like avenues it's led me to, or the experiences it's like allowed me to have in general. And I think that like I feel like outside of, I think like while I was doing it, I always had this fear of like, what if I didn't press the record button, or like what if I lose this like recording, or what if this like interview never sees the light of day because I fuck up in some way, and realizing that the impact that it had on my life outside of that, or being able to like know that having a conversation with somebody, regardless of if it's recorded or not, is valuable, I think was something that I've always really appreciated. And yeah, just being at this point in my life, I think is a testament to like whatever the magazine has been or what I wanted to do with it. And but yeah, and then also like connecting other people with each other, and like helping to foster friendships with people who maybe were included in the same issue or met each other because of some circumstance. And it felt really great doing the gallery shows and a lot like selling people's work and introducing new people to people's work, and putting on events or like happenings in some sense that people were able to be in the same room together or talk about things together or experience things together, and sharing people whose work I really look up to and who normally perform on a lot bigger stage, allowing them to share their work or talk about it in a more intimate setting or like a less curated or edited setting. And then also sharing people who were like very early on in their process or practice, and putting their work next to that felt really valuable and meant a lot. And yeah, like I was actually just visiting a friend of mine who I lived with for a long time, this artist Zeke Osmond, who lives in Portland right now. They we like lived together for a long time and met in college, and there was like for one of the gallery shows I put together this like poetry reading that was largely like they exposed me to a world of online poetry and a poetry community that I didn't know a lot about. But even just being able to create that setting to invite a bunch of different readers and writers to read together, and I think it was like a 5 or 6 hour long reading or something. So it was like a bunch of people and from different parts of the East Coast, and yeah, it just felt really nice to do things like that, and then also be motivated by like a friend of mine appreciating something and wanting to try to like create a scenario for them to meet a lot of people that they care about, or like hold people in a degree of like respect and appreciation for what they're doing. And yeah, and I think that like there's also a side of interviewing people where I think some people have communicated to me after interviewing them or after photographing them or after working with them in some capacity that they felt like they had a better understanding of their own work, or felt like the process of reflecting on their work through doing an interview helped them see the bigger picture of what they're doing, or really appreciate how much work they have done, or just like talk through stuff that people have otherwise maybe not asked them about their work. And I think I've also always really loved being able to leave some sort of impression or like help somebody through something outside of just the interview, through meeting them or learning about their work or learning about them as people. And it's even just been nice, like interviewing one person and being into their book, and then interviewing another person and buying that other person a copy of the previous person's book because I thought that they would really like it or whatever. And yeah, trying to like pass along everything and make everybody feel like they're a part of the same world versus making people feel like they're just individuals, I guess, or not a part of community, felt like really important in the process, I think.
Yeah, I think as a reader, personally, like I pretty much exclusively read comics. I rarely read novels, or maybe I'll read an article online or something.
Yeah.
The thing I really appreciate about Forge is like you bring all types and forms of art together under the one umbrella of your magazine. And I probably never look at photos, but I'll look at photos through your magazine, and it'll introduce me to new artists who I've never met before or never heard of before. And there's even like you said, like previously, like Kendra Yee. I didn't know who they were, but I found out their artwork through you. And I think maybe like Julie Major may have been in a similar issue or like an issue before.
Yeah,
And like knowing someone like Julie and seeing their art here, it's really fascinating to see someone makes something similar in a different city. And the fact that like you
Totally.
compare those artists and then people like me read them and then be like, what, who's this person? Who's Kendra? I need to learn about more of their artwork. And then,
Yeah.
I follow them on social media and stuff. And like, yeah, you're like a very good tastemaker. I feel like
I appreciate that.
you're really good at like curating these artists that may not necessarily ever show together, but the fact that you think that this photographer would look really good with like a Patrick Kyle painting, it's like unconventional for me, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that as well. And I think like it's been really nice to, I think now that I've done it for like almost 8 years, I think the uh, being able to see time pass through it, or see things develop and see different people's career change, or like go in different directions, or even just like seeing friendships that like happened over the course of doing it. I think using it as a tool, as like to document all of that, or as like a time capsule, feels like really exciting now that enough time has passed for people to really be able to look back on it, or think about it in the past tense, or see a world that doesn't exist anymore in the magazines, I guess. And yeah, I think that in doing it, it's really hard to see that, or think about it that way, or even just with curating a gallery show. I think one of my favorite parts of the last show that I did in Seattle was talking to all the artists for like months leading up to the show on the phone, and having an idea of what they were making, but like really not seeing the work in the same room together until the moment that I was like unpacking all the boxes and hanging everything up. And just the sense of like seeing it actually fit together in a room that was like just an idea in my head for a long time, or like I couldn't really anticipate whether or not it would actually work together. I think that like just trusting the people involved, or being a part of their process, or yeah, just like valuing everybody's voice and seeing what people's voices sort of come from a similar place, or are communicating something similar. I think that like going off of that more than the context, or more than the location, or more than the identity or whatever, I think has made it a lot easier to like find work that seems totally unrelated or different from each other, and figuring out how to like fit them together, or allow their audiences to appreciate each other.
Totally. um you like have complete control over Forge Art Mag, like including the ads, right?
Mm-hmm.
um and like you take photos for the ads too, right?
Yeah, for a lot of them, I think there's maybe even a couple that I didn't do photos for, but yeah, I think a handful of them were things that I was photographing previously, or maybe had some involvement with. And yeah,
How does designing ads for like your own magazine help your decision on like page and article layout?
yeah, I think a lot of the I never really went to school for design, and I think that like I was really fortunate that one of my best friends in high school, his mom was a graphic designer, and she showed us a lot of InDesign and Photoshop, and I just sort of like learned through him and his mom. And then I think, yeah, just like trying to make stuff through trial and error, and just paying attention to things, and buying books that looked interesting, or um, understanding what eras have had different types of art, or why design should be functional, and just, I don't know, a lot of different things have sort of gone into designing the magazine, or designing stuff for it. And I think as far as the ads were something that were sort of like introduced much later, and was kind of a way to try to create a budget to hire more people to do stuff for the magazine. Because in the past, yeah, anytime I was commissioning somebody to do like a comic or something, usually the submission section is all like people are just submitting work, and that section doesn't really have a budget. But the comic section where I would talk to people and have them make original comics for it, that I like set aside a budget to pay each of those artists, and yeah, and so the ad sort of like was a way to be able to ensure that there was a budget for paying those people and potentially adding other things or just like supplementing some of the costs, because for the most part I've like operated the magazine at like negative dollars or whatever, or like have not really ever made much of a profit from it. And even doing stuff like selling the t-shirts, usually that's been in part an opportunity to give other artists an item to sell on their own, or like I usually try to like split the inventory for things, or a lot of that money has just gone into like paying to develop photos for the magazine, because that's like a pretty that's maybe like the biggest cost of each issue every time I've done it. But yeah, I think I had maybe like had designed enough things for the magazine at that point that I had an idea of what I wanted the magazine to look like in general, or what sort of design seemed to make sense or seemed consistent with the magazine. So yeah, I think the ad sort of came afterwards, and was yeah, just sort of a way to try to like make sure that I like could count on hiring somebody to do 4 comics in 1 year, or hiring people to do individual comics and stuff like that.
Yeah, it really reminds me of Raw magazine,
Oh
because
yeah, totally.
Art Spiegelman would do the same thing, where he would hire artists in the magazine to illustrate their ads. And it's almost to the point where it's like you don't notice that they're ads right away, because it's like the artist who's a regular illustrated it. And it's usually about something that's very relevant to the magazine anyway. So
Totally.
it just makes more sense for an artist to illustrate it versus like a company to just give you this like promo photo that looks so jarring beside your photo
Totally.
or whatever.
Totally. Yeah, definitely. And I think I also, with the advertisements and just like trying to feature everybody, I think I've like wanted to similarly like make sure that the advertising felt like it was in sync with the stuff being featured. But yeah, I think also just like I've never really wanted to advertise anything that like wouldn't be something that I would engage with myself. And so I tried to reach out to people who I thought that the magazine audience would be interested in, and who I thought that who like I just really was excited about whatever they were putting out or putting together. And yeah, I think that the trying to figure out how to make sure that everything has a symbiotic relationship or is like not causing problems for each other is like important when you're curating lots of forces together.
Mm-hmm. One thing I remember from our your sleepovers with me, you showed me a comic you drew.
Oh yeah, I don't remember whatever that was.
It was maybe like a 4-page comic.
Mm-hmm.
But have you thought of like making a new comic recently or at all?
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, just in general, I think that from the past couple of years since I moved to LA and have been working more for a record label out here, I think I've like moved more into, and then also I think just like leaving New York and leaving like the period of time when I was in school and then working at Vice, I think that I've tried to prioritize making more personal work in a way that I haven't in the past, and that feels really exciting. And yeah, I don't really get very much practice drawing or writing nonfiction or writing in that format, but I think yeah, I think if I ever like had the opportunity, or if there was like structure to do something, I would be totally down to make a comic or at least like write something. But yeah, I think that like the sort of the way that your brain works to be able to write stories in that format and to like be able to do it so fluidly, I think is something that I just really don't have very much exercise in. And so it would, I think, take a really long time for me to make something that I was like proud of, or that felt like comparable to work that I've made in other formats or whatever. But yeah, I would totally be down to like write something too and have somebody else illustrate it or collaborate with someone.
Yeah, that was actually my next question. But before that, before you answer that, I will say your envelope art is like in
Oh yeah.
every single post. Like even posts from like 2 years ago or a year ago, I feel like your envelope art is like you're one-upping yourself every time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that's honestly like since dropping out of college, like that was really the only thing that I did to draw really regularly, and it like felt like a good commitment to try to like make something that I felt proud enough to post, but also like felt disposable enough to like leave my apartment the second that it was done being drawn or whatever. And yeah, I think that like I think that that's the other thing too, is most of the drawing I've done has been very like flat and like singular composition versus like narrative or thinking about landscapes or transitions and stuff like that. And I feel like if I were to do much visual art, I think maybe moving more into drawing or painting or stuff that is less linear or like less drawings involved would maybe be good. But and then also I think like I also enjoyed animation and doing stuff like that. And I think anything that gets you to like stop thinking about what you're doing and just continue to do it is important for me, because I get hung up on things like pretty easily. And like yeah.
Who are some of the artists that like you would love to write a comic with?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like I don't want to put anybody on the spot, or I don't want to like not say anybody. But I think there's a lot of artists who I think that there's certain artists who I would like to work on something with, just like where our voices would maybe make sense together. And like I've always really loved Kendra's work, and she's just like a close friend and someone who I like really believe in like everything that she writes and makes, and I feel like on some similar wavelengths with, and I don't think it would be too impossible for us to make something together, but
Yeah.
that opportunity hasn't really happened or presented itself. But I also really love Jordan Jackson, who I noticed you're wearing a shirt of his on. Yeah, he's like an incredible artist and someone who I've loved working with, and has just been like really easy to work with and has really great ideas, and I think has a really strong voice, and is someone that I would love to keep working with. But yeah, I don't know. There's like tons of artists that I look up to and love, and feel like I yeah, would feel so fortunate to collaborate with them. But I think as far as like people that I have worked with or do have some experience working with, and like know that we've worked well together, I feel like those are maybe some like good examples or peers that I really like look up to and appreciate.
You always have like amazing illustrators or like photographers that do the Forge cover art. And I was
Oh
curious,
yeah.
like, what makes you decide like, oh, I really want this person to be the face of Forge this quarter?
Yeah, I think usually, so for pretty much all of those cover pieces were submissions. So in a lot of cases, it was pieces that I didn't really know what the piece was going to be by the end of it. There were some that like I maybe received a sketch or multiple sketches, or there were some where I reached out to somebody specific, knowing or having the intention of wanting them to do the cover and sort of talking to them about it. But one of my favorite things about doing the magazine or having done that sort of thing was being able to talk to a lot of artists or reach out to some people or get submissions that I like didn't expect, and be able to talk to those people and say like, hey, I really love this piece, like I think it would be great for the cover, would you be down to make the back cover now, or would you want to do something to put on the back of the magazine? And I think the like cover is something that I guess I am like a little bit precious about, or I think like is important, knowing that like it'll be the thing that gets anybody to click on each issue. And I've like tried to also put nothing else on the cover besides the logo, just to also not distract from the piece itself. But yeah, I think there's been a handful of artists that I've just like really loved who who've made phenomenal covers and who I've been so proud of the work that they've made, or that I've been able to publish in the magazine. And I think that just like making sure that I never really want to instruct an artist too much or give them an idea of what to make or try to like tell them what to do, because I think with everybody I work with and every project I try to work on, I try to offer the situation for them to figure out what they're making in their personal work and how that would maybe tie into or would like influence what they want to make as a commission or as like a submission or whatever. And I think that being able to give people, I think also just where the stakes are so low and I like don't have any budget to do this, and it's all sort of like a labor of love or a sort of time capsule of a lot of artists making stuff and building each other up. I think I also never want to be too hands-on where I'm telling somebody what to do or not giving them some freedom to make something that they want to make. And so I think each cover has sort of come out as a piece that someone would otherwise make in their personal work. And that feels really good to me as well.
Yeah. The fact that Forge is like free, digital, it's so accessible. I'm curious, like, what are like the connections you've made through the fact that the magazine is just like one click away from anyone being able to read it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that has positives and negatives. I think that's always been a really important thing to me, and being someone who's like grown up in public education and like thinking about art as being something that is necessary for the public and just like really not wanting any of the finances or any of the budget around it to be a barrier for anybody to find out about anybody's work or learn about art. I think that's always just been like a really important thing to me. And with the videos as well that I did like early on, and I've filmed a bunch of other videos that just like haven't ever been edited, and maybe that'll become a project at some point. But I think with those two, that was also largely inspired by the PBS series Art 21, which is also coming from a like public art background, or thinking about art less in terms of commerce and more in terms of ideas and communication and stuff. So I think that I've always just really felt like the magazine would be something else if I charged money for it, or if it was if there was like more barriers of entry, and I would feel less good about not having enough money to pay everybody if it was something I was charging people for. And I think now that I like am older and have worked with a lot of artists and see the necessity in paying people for their work and see the like importance of like work that does have a budget, I think I'm now trying to move more into doing specific projects where I can provide money to people or can provide opportunities. And that, I think, if anything, has made it hard to keep up the magazine in the same way or like continue the project in that format the same way. But yeah, I think that like trying to think about the reader or the people as being people that are just going to stumble on it is maybe more important to me than thinking about wanting to get a certain amount of money from it or wanting it to be like a luxury item for people or whatever. And but yeah, I think in some cases that means that people will send me an email after finding out about the magazine 10 minutes earlier from Googling it or whatever, and will like maybe put no effort or research into whatever it is, and will then like email me to ask me for something or ask to have their work in it, or just contact me in a way that's like clear that they don't know what the project is or whatever.
Right.
And so that's maybe part of the downside of it. But the upside of it, I think, is like, yeah, just like the degree of randomness, or people that find it through different reasons or through different people, I think has been really exciting and like valuable.
Yeah, and I also think that like the fact that you can read it online and it's so accessible and free. When you do go to a convention and you see your table, you know, it's full of zines that the artists you've collaborated have created. And instead of, you know, buying a $20 magazine or whatever, they're buying a $3 zine, and they're buying like a $20 shirt or whatever, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And it like that gives more awareness to the reader to like the artist's work, and like you said, it gives the artist more recognition for wherever you're going, because you've traveled lots of different places, and
Yeah,
a lot of artists don't have the funding or accessibility to, you know, go to cab, but luckily, you know,
totally.
you have their zine on your table, and you know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think that just in general, I think that the magazine to me doesn't feel as much like the commodity or the thing that I want people to like take away from it, as much as the information in it, or like I want it to be more like a way to lead them to other people's work. And yeah, I think it also becomes complicated because I feature so much stuff and so many different people. I also don't want it to feel like I think what's really nice about selling an individual zine or a t-shirt made by one artist or whatever is you also can have like a very specific product or experience with somebody, where it's not like, if you're getting this person's work, you also have to really love this person or whatever. And I think like in the era before I started doing a lot of the magazine, I feel like a lot of the like live journal and early comic community and music and art community, there were sort of like compilations or anthologies published really regularly that were sort of a collection of people's work that was like one piece by everybody, and then everybody would maybe get one copy, and then someone would be selling the rest of them, and it mostly wouldn't really make money for each of the artists, and it wouldn't necessarily like get people to like read an entire complete work by any of those artists. But I think I saw that the format of that, putting that on the internet and trying to allow people to see tons of work together in a free way, but then asking for money when it's somebody's like something that they've labored over more, or that is like a part of the lineage of their career. I think in general, sometimes people get confused with like press being the marker of their career, or being included in things as being the marker of their career or whatever, whereas like the work you're making and your practice is your career, and all those things are maybe just avenues to find out about that. And so I like I've never really wanted to sell stuff or make stuff where like me knowing about a bunch of cool people is the reason why you're spending this much money. Like I would rather make something that's like basically a PDF that you can click on to find other people's work. But I would rather like sell their work or point you to buying their work from them. Because yeah, it just gets sort of complicated when you're sort of like trying to like also set a specific value for your time and energy and yeah, as like a curator, I guess.
I'm curious what your experience tabling at Lucky's Lounge was like.
Yeah, that was a really fun fair. That was for VanCaf, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was like a couple springs ago, and that was like the first time I'd ever been in Vancouver, and I feel like that community there, also like having worked with a lot of Canadian artists and being involved with the scene in Toronto, it was just like so exciting seeing that there was such an awareness of work in Toronto and the magazine in a place I'd never been, and with people who I'd never met before. And that was like really thrilling and exciting. Yeah, and I felt like being in Vancouver, it seemed like, just like the work I was making made sense to a lot of people there. And I think that, like, despite Vancouver being maybe like less accessible from a lot of other parts of North America and having like a pretty tight knit and like intimate community, I think that there's also just like some of the smartest people I've ever met living there, and some of the most like socially aware and like politically aware people, and also just like some of the most like just like diversity with people making work there, and people with like biracial backgrounds, or people who I think I just felt like I could relate to in a lot of ways. And I think that fair felt like a really great opportunity to meet a lot of people who I'd never met before, or whose work that I was seeing for the first time. But it also felt like it was like approachable enough and intimate enough to be able to also talk with everybody at every table and like see the whole fair and engage with it in a really positive way. Whereas I think some fairs can sometimes cater too heavily to one specific thing, or can be really large scale, and therefore it's like you only scratch the surface, or can maybe be somewhat cliquey in the way that it's sort of laid out or designed. And I think that I really appreciated that fair, and I think it was like one of the best like selling fairs that I've had in the wild too. So I've always loved doing fairs there because everybody's like super nice and great.
Yeah, and like the Lucky's Lounge, like that room, I'm sure had some contributors to Forge.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I remember, I think the weekend that I was doing that, I was sitting next to like Julie and Christian and Dog, and like they've been making like really incredible work for a long time. And I think I met them at TCAF like a number of years ago, and they were, I think, friends with my friend Sab, who's from Toronto, and just fell in love with both of their work really heavily. And they've been like super supportive and were really like kind when I was in Vancouver and like doing the fairs around there. And I think Dog was featured in the magazine a while ago, and Julie had contributed work and also made like a print for the magazine. And trying to think of who else was at that fair that I'd worked with.
Has Haley?
Yeah, Haley was. Yeah, Haley had a piece like several, maybe like a year or so earlier, and I think I found out about Haley's work through Julie. And there's kind of like I think that there was some people like Anna Firth, maybe.
Yeah.
I think Anna had a piece in the magazine afterwards, because I found Anna's work like at that fair. And I feel like each fair that's been like that was like a nice situation to both meet people in person who I'd maybe had worked with or had been in touch with online, and then also meet new people who were then like I was excited about featuring in the magazine.
I just want to jump ahead and talk about your photography again, and specifically your Moaning album cover. From what I understand, you guys did it pretty much completely traditional in a sense of like the tableau. And I'm curious what steps it took to create the album artwork.
So that was like I think the first album cover that was like really for like a proper release that I had worked on. And it was kind of like an unexpected thing because I was working on something else in LA around the time, and I'd interviewed Sean, who's the front person for the band a while ago, and he's like a artist in his own right and has done tons of animation work and visual art and fine art work, and I think that like him and Andrew and Pascal had sort of talked about a few different concepts for the album cover and had an idea for this image that was sort of like a window sitting against an exterior that looked into an interior. And so they kind of wanted to play with, rather than somebody sitting in their room looking out their window to see the sky. They wanted a window that sort of had a sky as its background looking into a room, and sort of thinking about, I guess, like voyeurism or sort of the removal of the viewer from whatever the like actual composition or the image is. And yeah, they had a few different ideas for how they could do it, but didn't really have the equipment or the like photo experience to really like get a solid image. And so I think we were hanging out at one point and we were just talking about it. And I think I originally offered to, like, when they told me about the idea, I was like, that sounds incredible. I'd love to help. And I was originally filming a documentary of them making it. And then after sort of filming them doing the testing for it and showing them some stuff with how they could approach the photo, they ended up just being like, oh, do you want to just help us do this? And I was like, yeah, totally. And yeah, I think it was about a week of shooting, like all throughout the night and like early in the morning trying to figure out how to do it. But we essentially like used a mirror to reflect a set that was on the other side of the mirror, and we hung the mirror so that you could see the sky from Sean's backyard. And so we sort of had the set outside for a long time, and there was plenty of like problems with lighting and just figuring out all the logistics for doing that shot. But yeah, it was like such a fun project, and it was really nice to work with them and just see how talented all of them are as visual artists as much as musicians. And I think that the like final day of shooting, we, like, Sean, I think, smashed the mirror with a hammer, and we then photographed in the day, and then at night the same composition with the shattered mirror. And then they ended up choosing, after like a week of shooting, I think they ended up choosing one of the last photos that were taken. And then one of the daytime photos is like used in the inner sleeve. But yeah, and I think that like the image sort of has this composition that looks shattered or fractured because it was done with a reflection with a mirror. And yeah, also just figuring out the logistics of like getting the background to be lit well enough, but also getting the interior to be lit, and then also trying to control the depth of field so that the image was still really in focus and flat for the mirror, but also the background was like still like in focus or didn't look too blurry. It was like, yeah, it just took like hundreds and hundreds of photos to get to those like ones that were actually used. But yeah, I like really love that process, and it's really fun collaborating with people on work, and it meant a lot that they gave me an opportunity to collaborate that way, having only just done sort of like press work. And I think I wrote the bio for that record at that time. So yeah, it was like fun to be included in a creative way as well.
Yeah, I love the inside sleeve, like how it's like
Thank
there's
you. Yeah.
a nighttime and then the daytime. I like how you showed both, because
Yeah,
they both like are completely different, like emotionally.
totally. Yeah. Yeah. And originally I think the plan was to try to use the daytime one, but then after they sent all the photos to the label's like, this one looks really cool. Like, I think we should go with the nighttime because it feels like it makes sense with the album. And yeah, I'm like super happy with how that whole record turned out.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. I made you sign my copy when you
Yes, I remember that.
That's how much I loved it.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Speaking of which, like when you stayed with me, you chose to finally release your first EP as a
Yeah.
I'm curious what led you to, the releasing your first EP, and now this summer you got to release your first album.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so nice spending time with you guys, and I think you guys were some of the first people I really showed a lot of that work to. And I think at the time I was like having a lot of different feelings around personal work versus magazine work. And I think although the magazine has always felt really personal to me and has always felt like a really important like resource in my life and like way for meeting people and working with other people, I think I was also realizing the limitations for personal work or trying to make that project feel personal in some ways. And I felt like somewhat discouraged around continuing to do it in like a personal way. Also just seeing how sort of like when you put a lot of yourself into work like that, people can have a different idea of like what the project like means ultimately, or what their involvement with the project can be, or just what the just like I don't know, I think I felt like where that is a project that is so nonfiction and is really driven by documenting other people's work or whatever, I think in a lot of cases I felt like doing an interview with somebody allowed me to talk about like economics or philosophy or art or things that were outside of maybe just how somebody made a painting or wrote a comic or whatever, or made an album. And it felt really nice to try to work in a lot of those ideas or my own personal ideas into questions that were being asked. But yeah, it felt like I had been making music in high school a lot and studied music when I was younger, and made music pretty early on in college, but stopped after just really having to re-examine what my life was, and like I think just also around like when I was starting out college, I like my dad passed away around that time too, and so I think just my attitude around making work and making art felt much less like a priority, and I think I was like really focused on trying to like have a career or have some sense of stability, and not sort of like feel like I needed to be reliant on my family in any way, and yeah, and so I think that like there was just a degree of like reeling back from making personal work and trying to focus more on supporting other people and helping them out, that I think by the time I was staying with you guys and did that fair, I think I sort of like had been making stuff and felt like it was worth it to try to have an outlet for that. And I think also just having done the magazine for a while, and suddenly having people who were really excited about it or engaging it with it in a way that was really meaningful to me. I think I also like have also felt some insecurity around promoting my own work or sharing work, or just like thinking about my work alongside other people's work, and even continuing to feel that discomfort even when people were excited about the work I was making, or felt like it like achieved some success in some way. Like I think I realized like, oh, if I'm going to feel like weird or insecure about my work, if people like it or dislike it, then like I should really not care like whether or not people like it or not, or I should like really not be hung up on how something is being received as much as how I'm making it. And so I think that body of work was the first time that I was really making stuff purely for myself to listen to, and music that I like would like try to make to like go on a walk and listen to, or just stuff that was fun to make. And I was also like living by myself for the first time when I started a lot of that work too. So having the freedom and flexibility to record at home and just play guitar and like sing at any time of the day was like, I think allowed me to have a practice that I didn't really even get to have when I was a high schooler living at home. And then the record that I made, it feels so weird to call it a record, like knowing like just what I've made to put into it, or just like not being as precious about whatever the commodity is. But yeah, that album was like I think I had the first ideas for it maybe a year before it came out, and the title of it was based on a photo I took when I was in Seattle, around when I was doing the residency there with Mount Analog. And I think I spent a lot more time writing songs before going into recording them, and there was a lot of some of those songs were much older, and some of the songs were written like really quickly, and it just felt really nice. I think that whereas doing the magazine is celebrating a lot of other people's work and putting a lot of time and energy into researching them and talking about their work and better understanding what their work has meant to them and other people, I think doing this project and still being able to collaborate with people and still be able to give a platform to other artists by like organizing a show or having like the first person I ever interviewed, Jane Mai, did the album cover, and like commissioning her to do it felt really great. And having Pascal from Moaning, he mastered it, and PHF, who's an artist from New Zealand that I've worked with at the record label that I work for, he helped mix it and like played keyboard drums on like a track for it. It felt really nice to be able to make a project that still was collaborative or gave an opportunity or was a thing that I could hire other people for, but was like ideas that were like much more personal to me or whatever. And yeah, and I think also like Emily Asina, who's a friend who I met in college, and she's like an incredible musician, and she has been super supportive since we met, and I interviewed her and then did a music video for her while we were still in school, and I'd just been sending music to her back and forth for a while I was living in LA, and she just sort of out of the blue asked me to play her record release show last winter. I think that was really like the last issue that I put out for the magazine to date so far is came out like the same month or week that first show happened. And I think that like even just being able to have the experience of performing and getting the sense of like what performing means to people who are doing it and the sort of like therapeutic quality of it and the type of communication that happens when you perform in front of other people. I think that was like a really, really meaningful experience and got me to actually learn how to play a lot of songs that I had written and like just made me take it seriously in a different way. And I'm like forever grateful for Emma for giving me that, or sorry, Emily. Yeah, I'm forever grateful for Emily for giving me that opportunity and for being able to, yeah, just like let me see that side of music. And I think she has really great values around the music she makes and why she makes it. And so, yeah, just sharing a stage with somebody like that and being given this really special opportunity to think about music more seriously, I think helped me get over a lot of the insecurities and hurdles around it that had prevented me from doing it for a long time.
Yeah, I think that your music is like, I mean, you're singing in it and it's you and a guitar, so it's like the most personal work you've done, or at least that I've absorbed out of your art that you've shown publicly.
Yeah, totally.
And I think it's really interesting to listen to now because, you know, people associate you with so many other people. They think of your photography, they think of your interviews, they think of your writing, whatever. But it's like you and a guitar and you're writing and performing music that you want to, you know, sing about. So yeah, I just think it's really interesting because your voice is so prominent in all these medias, but like music is the one I think that like your voice really like, you know, speaks out the most.
Oh, thank you so much. That really means a lot. Yeah, and I think that it's like music has always been really important to me, and I think it's been the like thing that has led me to most other art in general, or has gotten me to get really excited about art. And I think since studying music in high school and like deciding not to really pursue it in any way, I think it's been like 8 years where I've tried like pretty much everything other than playing music or making music, and it feels nice to like finally come back to it in some way and not feel jaded about it or not feel discouraged the same way. And yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, and I think that it has felt like the first opportunity for me to like really say certain things or try to communicate stuff that the magazine is like not really like the best place for, or it doesn't really make sense to do it that way. And I think that there's a lot of ideas and stuff that I hope are present in the magazine, and I hope that my own spirit is still like visible in the work I've made for other people and work I've made about other people, and this like personal work. But yeah, I think rather than just thinking about the nonfiction or the reality of everything, I feel like this music project just felt like the first time that I can communicate stuff or utilize some degree of surrealness or storytelling um, or yeah, just like unspoken ways of communicating that has just been so exciting to explore recently. And I feel like really, yeah, just appreciated to have the time and energy to do that.
Well, I'm really glad that you're sharing your music.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
My final question for you is when you stayed with us, you were just starting your job at Danger Collective Records, and I'm curious what's kind of like your normal day working for them, and also kind of what led you to publishing Rolling Paper, your newspaper with Danger Collective.
Yeah. So I met Reed, who runs the label, also in college. I think uh, me and his girlfriend Lizzie, who's also like an amazing artist and photographer, we were like living in the same dorm very briefly at the beginning of college. And I think I just like was aware of the fact that he was releasing tapes and was just excited about a lot of the stuff coming out of LA in general. And so we met originally through Nick, who plays in the band Surf Curse and has the project Current Joys, at a show that he was playing in New York because I interviewed him. And yeah, we were both at that show, and Nick knew both of us, and so he introduced the two of us, and we realized like we had been going to school together, and that we just had a lot of the same interests. And then yeah, I think since then, because I was working at Bayonet Records in New York for like a number of years, I sort of learned a lot about running a label and contributing to a label and just the structure of a release and distribution and packaging design, like all these different things that I then was sort of consulting Reed or giving him and people he was working with advice on what to do and how to do stuff. And that then led to me sort of doing all the packaging design for the releases and having a more consistent contribution to the label. And then, yeah, I was working at Vice and helping with stuff sort of more from afar. And then when I left Vice was when I started just doing stuff for them more regularly, but still in like a part-time capacity. And then and then I was deciding, I think they gave me the opportunity to work with them. And there was like about 6 months when I was still living in New York that I was the label manager for Bayonet. And then I became the label manager at Danger when I moved to LA. And so, yeah, I mean, the day-to-day is like everything is always kind of changing, and I really appreciate being a part of a small business that is like making an effort to grow and change and like, yeah, just like do different things or just continue to move along. And Reed is like around my age, and so we've both been doing our projects for a long time and since we were really young. And so we also, I think, have a degree of like understanding and forgiveness of also starting out projects as like basically teenagers and then becoming like adults through those projects. And I think like since moving here, I've done a lot to try to just like, just help Reed figure out the direction that he wants to push the label and bringing on more people whose work I really believe in and who I also really want to like help support through the means of the label. And I think every day is sort of different because we've just continued to try to change how things work and who we work with, and just growing the company as there's more of a demand for music that we've released, and we just have more resources to be able to do things. So no week has really felt the same as the previous week, and sometimes that routine is really hard to like find. And even just with the current virus situation, like it's been like hard to really have things feel normal. But typically on like a normal week, I would go in like 3 days a week and then work from home 2 days a week. And so we work from an office that's downtown in LA and do most of our like, we like operate the online store for the label and ship stuff out, and do everything from, I do a lot of the art direction stuff like packaging design and finding people to direct music videos and artists to do t-shirts and a lot of that work. And then also still am involved with just like corresponding with all the publicists that work for other releases and working with the distributor and working with the manufacturers. And I think although it's a really small business and it's just like a couple people doing things, like those couple people do everything for the label pretty much, and you kind of have to use different parts of your brain every day. And there's a lot of just like working with other people and working with young people and just really trying to like get better at communicating and being supportive of everybody. And yeah, it's been like an important learning experience, and I feel really cut out for the type of work just from doing the magazine and having to be really multifaceted and also just working and engaging with a lot of people. But yeah, I really love the fact that there's the opportunity to like screen print one day and then mail orders another day and then send emails another day and then visit a artist another day or whatever. And yeah, I think the newspaper was like an idea I had when I was still living in New York and didn't really know the means to be able to do it. Just with the magazine changing and the like online landscape changing because of social media and everything, I felt like it felt really nice to try to work in a different format other than just online publishing. And there's a ton of really amazing alternative newspapers that were passion projects for people that I've always really loved and appreciated and were enormously inspiring to the start of rolling paper. And Jacob Rendez, who did Mother's News, yeah, that project was enormously inspirational, and meeting Jacob in Providence was like a really, really inspiring experience. And yeah, just the way that he sort of talked about the function of his newspaper, I think was big and influential. And then like Paper Rodeo was also another big inspiration, and Free Drawings that Jesjeet Gill did, and Dunk magazine was something that, or I guess, was it Dunk newspaper? Or, yeah, Dunk, the paper was like something that Julie introduced me to, and just seeing the way that you can have a similar type of dialogue on the internet, but in this newspaper format, and the randomness is really different from the way that social media sort of aggregates information and people now, and also just the fact that it like doesn't have a comment section and people kind of have to make the effort to find it, and people who I wouldn't have maybe tried to send it to are finding it. And yeah, so I wanted to do a newspaper in some capacity, and then once I was working for the label, it seemed like, because we mail out all of our orders and like are pretty much like doing every stage of releasing a record, being able to like leave little clues to things or just leave as much of an impact on people as possible while engaging with stuff directly, it felt really like a great opportunity to make a promotional thing for the label that also was promotional for tons of other people. And the goal with it so far has been to do one big feature on someone who is releasing an album on a different label that's not being put out by the record label. That way it's introducing people to other music that we're not releasing, and it's not like we're just celebrating our own music, and it like also gets people who maybe don't know about the label to engage with the label for the first time. And then yeah, and then I wanted to have something where I think the magazine has been amazing for featuring artists and has felt really wonderful, but not being able to hire people or pay people for their work in a lot of cases has not felt great. And I wanted to move into a format where I can pay people to do stuff. So the newspaper essentially functions as like a bonus item that you get in every order from the magazine, or from any $20 order from my website, and then any vinyl or apparel order from the record label, it comes with a newspaper, and so we kept the cost of it low enough to be able to not try to plan to make money from it, but made a budget where we could pay people for it, and utilize the label's distribution to get it in stores and record stores and bookstores like across the country, and then also just send it to whoever's ordering stuff from us. So yeah, it's been like a really nice project, and similar intention as the magazine, but trying to like fix a lot of the things that I felt were stuff I wanted to improve on.
Yeah, it seems like it's like the perfect mix of, the label and what you've been doing for a really long time. It makes a lot of sense. And I picked up a copy from Lucky's
Oh,
when
cool.
it came out. And I remember enjoying flipping through it. I haven't seen the second issue yet. I don't know if you've sent it to Vancouver.
Yeah, I haven't really sent it out very much. The second issue came out the week that the stay-at-home order was placed in Los Angeles. So they literally, like the newspaper place that printed it left it outside and were like, come pick this up. Like, we're not going to interact with you, but like, hopefully you'll get here before it gets destroyed or whatever.
Wow.
And so we had to like drive and pick it up. And then we've been mailing it in orders. And then I like very recently sent a stack to the Beguiling, but just because of a lot of stores not being opened, I haven't really had a good sense of like what the best time to like send out this issue would be, or what places are functioning in a way where people can pick it up. And so although it came out in March, like the fact that it's July now feels so crazy. And yeah, I'm like sort of just now trying to figure out how to go about distributing the new issue, but I'll definitely like send you a copy, and if Lucky's is open, I can try to like send them.
Yeah, Lucky's is open. They've been doing deliveries the whole quarantine.
Oh, cool.
They've been driving to my door and dropping off comics.
That's incredible.
Twice a month. Yeah, it's life of luxury being stuck inside.
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing.
Yeah. Speaking of comic shops, just before we go, is there any stores, like record stores or comic shops, you want to give a shout out to before we say goodbye?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I would say like anybody who, like, bookstores, record stores, photo developing labs, there's so many businesses that I think are really devastated by this. And I think that the fact that our view of the future and how much this is going to affect the art economy in general is like very, very scary. And I think whatever things people can do to help support any small businesses or stores in their local community is like, I would definitely recommend, just like supporting anybody that's really close by or who you think has a really big impact on your community. And I know like one store, while I was in the Northwest visiting my old roommate, Zeke, that artist, I visited Hex Induction Records, which is a record store that another friend, Dean, who used to work for Sub Pop, opened up in Seattle. And that store opened like right around when I think a couple months before the virus really like hit. And I was originally going to play a show there with my friend Emma, who plays in the band Red Ribbon. And that show sort of fell through. And I was like really excited to go visit the store. And the store is named after a record by The Fall, and I like really love The Fall too. So it was like I was really just looking forward to going to that store, and it was nice to finally get a chance to see it in person recently. And I tried to like spend some money there and support that place. But yeah, I think that there's so many places I can't really think of. I don't want to like favor any too much, but yeah, I think there's a bunch of places in New York. Yeah, I guess it's also just, it's hard to know what places are functioning now or what places have shut down. But yeah, I would say wherever you live, if you can help out any local places or places that you've supported when you visited other places, like definitely everybody needs the help right now.
Yeah, yes they do. And thank you for spending your afternoon with me to talk about.
Absolutely, yeah, it was such a pleasure reconnecting.
Yeah,
I'm so glad we could have this conversation, and thank you so much for interviewing me. I feel like I haven't really had the opportunity to have questions asked, and have only really been on the other side of the the
Yeah,
situation.
that's why I thought you'd be a good interview person, because you have done so much work, and you're kind of like you push the other people ahead of you so often, and your voice is so important, and I'm
I
really
really
glad that we
appreciate that.
sit down and talk about all the work you've done and what our futures may look like, and and I just hope that the world will be safe and everyone will be healthy again, so we can continue doing these festivals and going to concerts, and
Yeah,
I can see you perform in person.
yeah, I
you know
would love that. Yeah, I think that it's important. This is like obviously an incredibly difficult and uncertain time for so many different reasons, and I think uh, where the future feels really bleak and it's difficult to really plan ahead or think about the future, I think at the same time recognizing how long time coming a lot of the conversations that are happening now are, and how much we really do need to shift as a society to being one that is more compassionate and does think about the consequences of everybody's decisions, and does think about our commitment and what we owe other people who have less than we do or who need more help than we do. And I think, yeah, just I think art, although it feels frivolous in some ways, and a lot of people are maybe moving away from making art or like having a practice, I think if anything, this is more of an opportunity to realize that art is not so much something to promote yourself or promote a product or promote something that is really material. And art is, for a lot of people, a practice and a therapy, and is a way of communicating and a way of having community. And I think like my hope is that like that becomes more and more important and more prioritized in everybody's practice and work that they're doing. And I feel really lucky and fortunate to have been doing a project with that sort of incentive the whole time, and also to allow that project and allow a lot of work I've done that has meant not making money, or has meant sacrificing time for other people, or doing stuff that has been around supporting other people. Like it's meant a lot to really feel like people have made gestures in return, or have invited me to do work with them, or to be included in a way that has given me a level of stability and sustainability that I can still do projects that are free and accessible, but not like worry about paying rent and stuff like that. And yeah, it's been, I like really want to keep doing that, and also see the value in, like, I still think everybody needs to be compensated and treated fairly for their work, and finding the balance between accessibility and sustainability, and people making money and being able to continue to make their work is something I feel very like wrapped up in, and want to figure out how I can support more people. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, and I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, of course. That was so well spoken. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. It's so great seeing your face.
Yeah, yeah, so nice hearing your voice. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. Bye bye.